Hello and welcome to this Stampscapes quick card project. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be using three 1" by 2" pieces of stamp board, and we're going to be working this scene around the Lakeside Cove. It's the smaller one. Little kayaker, you can use any type of little canoeist or something like this down in the water as a visual focal point. We're going to be doing this in kind of both warm and, kind of neutral cool tones right here with the purple tones. I'm using Marvy inks right here, but you can use whatever you have. These are all dye-based inks, so you can use different types of inks if you want to. You can use alcohol inks or something like that if you know how to use those and get a little bit of a swatch down there. Just use the appropriate type of black ink to stamp over whatever you're coloring these backgrounds with. Okay, now I said I'm using these Stampboard tiles right here, and it has this soft clay coating on the top of it. Now, you can get those, or you can use just a piece of paper, like cardstock or something like that. Now, I'm going to be doing some subtractive types of marks on my stamp board, which you can't do just on regular types of paper, but you can come up with a similar looking project. And I'll talk about some alternatives for doing some little effects on here that I'm going to be doing with my scratch knives, but I'll show you how to do it with something like acrylic paint pens or something like that. I have a quote stamp right here that's going to go very well with a lakeside type of scene. And then we're going to be mounting our main scene, whatever project, onto a piece of paper, and then we're going to mount it on a card base here. I'm going with a dark card base to kind of, I don't know, make the scene really kind of pop out nicely. So we'll see how that looks, but you can do it on, a different color of paper as well. So, yeah, just tweak accordingly. Okay? All right, so I'm just going to be getting a kind of swatched, varied background onto these tiles. Okay, I want to make it look kind of like a twilight type of scenario. Okay, the sun's gone down just below the horizon, or a few minutes after that, where you get this glow coming from the horizon. Okay, so I'm going to have this kind of lighter down here, and then as it transitions up here, it's going to be getting a little bit darker. We don't have a lot of area to work with. Like I said, this is just 2" right here. Okay, like I said, you can make this a larger scenario if you want to. You don't have Lakeside Cove small, you have Lakeside Cove large, something like that. You can make this card a little bit bigger. Okay, so if you're doing this on just a piece of white cardstock or something like that, you're not going to be doing that, with three separate pieces. You're going to be doing it on one piece. And then, if you want to, you can slice it to 3 even pieces, and you can, present it separated like that, and that's kind of cool to do. Okay, now the one thing that I did do before I started this was I stamped all my edges of my Claybord tiles with this Brilliance gold ink, just because I didn't want to be, that is still rubbing off a little bit. I was going to say it, I didn't want to be working with this while it was still a little, too wet. It's not sopping wet or anything like that, but it's a little bit wet. Okay, so I'm just applying this tan color. This one happens to be a pale orange. Alternative colors could be any kind of tan color. If you have any kind of distress inks or anything like that, that would be fine. But that little bit of a warm tone is going to be kind of a nice base coat for our other colors to come. You don't have to do something like that, but layering something like that underneath, whatever color scheme you're working with, you can use this kind of tannish color. Like an antique linen would be a good one, in the distressings. A lot of you have distressings, or like an old paper, that type of thing. Something that's a little bit warm, but not overpowering in terms of value. So nothing too dark, okay? That would be preferable. It's just kind of providing a base coat. Okay, so I'm going to transition now to my purple tone. I'm going to use the same little paper towel that I, applied my first color with. Now see this one right here, I'm not going down all the way to the base. Or you could, but let's see, maybe I went down a little bit too far. Okay, now this is a pale violet right here, so it's fairly light in value, okay? And plus there's a lot of the pale orange still on my applicator, which just happens to be a little wadded up paper towel. Okay, like that. So we have that. So you see that little bit of variation right here? I have a lot of it up here and then right down here. Kind of light in the middle like that. That's what you want. It doesn't have to be perfect either. If I did this again, it wouldn't look like that. It'd be a little bit different. I'd kind of refine it, but it's not really going to matter too much. Okay, this is my violet. This one's pretty dark now, so I'm moving up into a pretty dark tone. Okay, you can see how much darker that is. But this is getting pretty wet with ink, so it's not going to apply onto that too fast. I don't think. It is kind of dark, so maybe it will. Okay, I'm going to leave it a little bit streaky because I like a little bit of that, like, cloudy type of formation in there. Okay, so I'm coming across this way. And then I'm going to come across this way too, okay, when I'm coming from the other side. And again, let's leave it a little bit streaky. Where I'm coming across the different tiles like that. It's a little bit tricky. It's kind of catching a little bit, so I kind of use kind of a light touch, okay, when I'm coming across like that. So something like that. And then, that was kind of more of my streaky touch on there. And then I come in with a little bit of a tapping motion like that to apply more ink. Sometimes when you're just streaking like that, you're kind of rubbing off some of the ink that's already been applied, okay? So now, let's go for a little bit more. I'm going to put a little bit more tone around the edge too, about like so. Now you can use your alcohol inks in conjunction with your dye-based inks too. I was thinking, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, maybe I'll do that on here. Maybe I'll use a little bit of marker tones in the background. And again, that's something that you can do too with, your different types of papers too. Not just, this Claybord. Okay, let's see if I can get this a little bit deeper in tone. It's not going too dark. It's kind of, it's darkening very slowly because I have a lot of ink already laid down on here. So I'm trying to apply kind of a wet ink into kind of a damp surface so it's not transferring onto that very easily. So, I mean, it takes longer for it to get darker, but it's easier to blend those. So, that's the other side of the coin. If you want it to apply real fast, it's going to be a little bit more precarious of a exercise. So I make it into kind of a slower process where I can just kind of achieve my deeper saturations of value color with, I don't know, kind of repetition like this, okay? All right, so let's go with, here. It looks like this is taking a little bit more of a darker ink down at the base. I'm just doing it on a tiny portion, okay? See, I'm kind of hitting it mostly off the paper like this, or off the tiles. It's getting a little bit darker at the bottom of my piece because the top of it had more ink. Let's see if I can just kind of sop up more ink on here. Yeah, there we go. And as the tile kind of gets dry, it's accepting the ink faster, okay? I think it's also because now this is predominantly this darker color as opposed to having those two other colors underneath it. I just like using the same, applicator, paper towel or whatever, because I think I get kind of smoother transitions, not jumping just from one ink, and then switching this out and going to a completely dry paper towel and then using it like that. I like going with this and then using the same one and just going into that because it's a combination of those two. And that's why I usually work from light colors to darker ones. So you're not polluting like a lighter tone or something like that after using a dark one with the same applicator. All right, so you can see that kind of applying in there. It's starting to really transfer on there. All right, now, here's what I'm going to do too. I want a stronger vignette around the perimeter of these tiles like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to black, but now when we start doing this, start off with a tiny little corner like that, okay? It's like a little 1/4 inch like that. Now don't go in here so fast either, okay? Just stay on that one corner like that and then just kind of bring it out like this, okay? Around, don't go in like that. Kind of just bring it around on the edge and then see, I'm kind of having this on the outside of my card. Now this is a dimensional little tile, so that's easy to do, but if you're doing that on a piece of paper like this, you can also do it. Just stay on the little corner like that, okay? And you can see this little edge like that, okay? So you can see how much you're using kind of off paper. You can see it right there too. Okay, let's do that on this corner right down here. And I'll show you where this comes into play, where it looks really good. After we stamp our image in here, okay? 4 corners. All right, so we have that. All right, now, this is what's going to be different with these tiles and the usage when we come to making our impressions from a piece of paper, okay? So these tiles, and if you have a piece of unmatted rubber, you can put it on your acrylic block or something like that and tack it down. I find that's going to be a little bit easier than using my bare rubber, but if you only have the bare rubber, just lay it down nice and flat and just keep it down and then ink it up like so. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm inking this up. And this is where, if you've done alcohol inks, like a background or something like that, or your distress oxides, whatever you're using, use the appropriate ink now to make the impression on top of this, okay? So some inks, like alcohol inks, you're not going to be able to get an impression using a dye-based black on top of alcohol. So use your StazOn or something like that, like a solvent ink or something of that sort. If it's a dry pastel background, use whatever your favorite pad is to stamp over pastels. Okay, but here's what I'm going to do here now. I'm going to take my tiles and remember which one goes where, okay? See how this goes like this? So if I flip this, I usually go with my middle one like this. You can see that gold on here, how nice it looks. And I'm going into my card about like so. So I go with the center one like this, okay? And I'm holding that down like so. But now what you do is you keep that there. And now see, this one is on this side now, right? Because we're flipping these over, okay? So I'm going to take this and I'm going right next to it like this. Now remember, you're not going to do this if this is paper that you're working on. If you're working on paper, you just stamp one, time, and then do your cuts on your paper afterwards, okay? And here this one goes, and you're flipping it right around like this. And you're lining it up like so, and then going for your impression, okay? I just find this easier to do than taking rubber to these 3 tiles lined up like that, because sometimes, you know, you don't get that impression right on the edges, okay? Where tile meets tile, maybe one tile's a little bit thinner than the others or something like that. And plus, I mean, you're trying to stamp over, 3 separate areas, or 3 separate surfaces, I should say, okay? Okay, here we go like that. Now you can take these off. Here it goes like this, that, and like that. Now my tile is, it's kind of damp right now, so I did hold that down for a little bit longer, than, probably need be on a piece of paper or something like it, something that's a little bit more absorbent. All right, now see, this is this Lakeside Cove small. You can do this one on a Lakeside Cove large too, with these small tiles. You're just kind of getting a smaller portion of it. But even so, I have this little space out here, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to stamp it right on the edge like this. I overlap that impression a little bit, maybe about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch or so. Stamp and hold for a little bit, allow that ink to transfer. Okay, see how that fills up that area, and then you have that little gap there. This is, something you don't have to do. I just had kind of a decent sized gap over here, like a 1/4 inch, so I didn't want that. So see this right here? This is like edge to edge right here, right there. So I'm moving it over slightly, okay? Now this one, there was less space there, but let's fill it up anyway. Another thing is this too, is if sometimes if there's a really small gap, sometimes you don't have to, stamp additional imagery out to the side out here. But what you do is you just close in this vignette a little bit more, that dark perimeter like that. Okay, let's see how that looks and see if it's kind of separated like that. It looks pretty cool. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna get my little canoeist kayaker down here like that. I don't like to separate the kayaker too much, but I thought, let's get a little bit of a focal point in there, I think. Now this kayaker, I'm not going tile to kayaker, okay? When the stamp is smaller than the tiles, I take stamp to, surface, or when the surface is, smaller than the stamp, a lot of times I go surface to stamp. It's just easier to line things up. All right, so there's our little kayaker down here. All right, now this is going to take a little bit of time to dry completely, but one of the thing that I'm going to do mostly up here is I'm going to be adding on little stars or something of that sort. So I'm not going to be really touching too much of the imagery that's a little bit wet. But let's get some of it though. Okay, now you see these rocks in here? Those rocks are, for the most part, they're illuminated because, remember, this was a lighter area down here. And remember when I went from dark to light like this? So it left, those little rocks in there a little bit lighter just to begin with. Okay, now that black in there is a little bit wet, but I think I would like to kind of add in some shadows like that with my alcohol pen. So I can come in here. Let me see if it's dry enough. And like at the base of the, like if there's a rock like this, I'm just coming in with a little bit of this tone about midway up on the rock, just to add in some little bit of extra shadow work into those rocks, okay? So we're going like that. And I feel that anchors my rocks. It makes them look a little bit more three-dimensional, and it's kind of within the color scheme of the, you know, the tones, the background tones, okay? If you want to, you can hit it with something like a little bit of warm tone, like this, or, I don't know, something like this. And what is that? That's kind of the color that we used in the background in there. So you can do it in a more specific targeted area. You might even be able to do something like colored pencil. Colored pencils don't kind of transfer really well onto this tile because it's a fairly smooth tile. Okay, now what I'm going to be doing on here with my scratch tools, and this one's the rounded scoopy one. It's by Speedball. There's different types of tools out there for scratching away at this. Some of them are very kind of more needle-like, and that's kind of harder to get when I'm going after with this, but you can kind of do a little scratchy kind of, you know, process on there if you want to do some subtractive marks. Let me see, I'm getting a little out of focus there. Okay, so what I'm going to do though, okay, so see, this is this rock. We added the shadow at the base of it. Now, the middle isn't going to be white like it is, you know, on this piece of paper right here. Remember, it has some tone in it, that warm tone. It was that pale orange. There might be a little bit of that violet in these rocks too. But what I'm doing is I'm taking this scoopy area and I'm doing a little bit of a scratch right on the top of it, which is going to be removing that amount or that area of the pale orange color that was applied to it. So this is going to be very subtle because I'm going to be revealing the white of the board against that very pale color. So it's not going to be like standing out too much. It stands out more if this is like a middle tone blue or something like that. It's real nighttime, you know, type of thing. But this gets a little bit more of a kind of a highlight thing going in here. Now I'm just staying on one rock and I'm getting this kind of, I don't see this as like gouging out ink off of the surface. It's almost like I'm just kind of rubbing some of that. I mean, it's a scratching, but you know, kind of this, the sensibility of it is kind of like you're rubbing ink off of it. Okay, like, you know, in repetition. And that's so you don't just gouge into the board, but you're kind of removing kind of like a powdery amount of it. But like you see that, see those highlights on there? Look how much lighter they are than up here. And I just did it off the top of the rocks in there. Now see these rocks in the background and right over here? Let's do the same thing with those. Now see, I'm turning this like in this direction because this is my natural hand motion like this. If I'm doing this, you know, I remember I'm seeing it from back over here, so I can't see beyond, you know, my hand's in the way. But when I go like this, you know, I'm within clear view of my tile like this, so I can see it easily. Now this is where if you're going to be doing some highlighting. Okay, now see, I'm doing the scratching highlighting right here because this Claybord is kind of like scratch board. You can scratch off media that's been applied to the surface right here. But let's say I don't have that. I'm doing this on a piece of paper. So what you can use to get your highlights on there are things like acrylic paint pens, like a white one, or this one's a tan colored one. And what this tan colored one is kind of like, it's like this pale orange like this. It's going to be a little bit of a different, you know, look. But that's what I use most of the time, because most of the times I'm not doing scratch, you know, I'm not doing reverse marks on surfaces because they're not made for that, okay? So this has a like a thick clay surface on it that's made to be able to, if you want to, scratched into. All right, see how those rocks really kind of stand out a little bit more with that lighting in there? All right, now I'm going to show you something that's really fun to do, and this is something that I did with my preschool kids, my group. This is the 2x2 tile, okay? And you can see it's the same stamp on here, like that, all right? But we did this project for 4-year-olds, and they did it all themselves too, but we have this lighting in there. real light tone in there, and it goes out to darker tones. Now, I didn't do this North Star with the kids. That's too young. But these little stars like this in here, all it is taking this, and you do this little twirl like this, okay? And you reveal these little types of dots like that. Now, you can do that with, you know, your acrylic paint pen or something like that, too. But I'll show you what I do to one of these. Okay, now on one of these like that, I'm going to take my kind of more spear-like scratch knife. There's a lot more scratch knives that look like this one than this speedball kind of spoonish one. Now there's other ones that look, I don't know, they look kind of like this, and then it goes like this, okay? And you can use this part of it. This is like a straight blade, but you're using more of this rounded edge like that to kind of pull away. But this one's a little bit more varied than this one, but you can use that. Okay, but let's go back to this one right here. What I'm doing is on one of these little dots that I scored in here, okay, I'm going to make a 8-point star. So I'm scratching into this like this. And every time I make an arm of a star, I'm switching it into that direction. Like I said, that's more kind of conducive for my mark, my scratch, okay? And I'm making it a little bit stronger right at the source, okay, the center of it, which is that one scratch that I put in. I'm going to make these scratches a little bit longer horizontal. And see, I don't try to get it in one scratch. I'm doing it in multiples, just like when I'm removing ink off here, like that, okay? So here's my 4-pointed little cross like that, okay? Now that doesn't make for a star, but what you do is these secondary little points on here, you make them shorter. And you get all 4 like that. And then you have your little 8-pointed star like that. Now I went longer on my scratches like that because this is a horizontal format here. On something like this, I probably went, you know, you can go equal, but on these ones I usually go with the, whatever, ascender and descender kind of arms a little bit longer, like that. And this one's kind of about equal, though. This one, you can see I didn't do the edges like that on this. Now, we weren't doing the edges with the preschool kids, just because we wanted to make it simple as possible, but they all got that. I forgot we had even added in the little foregrounds like that. And then we made magnets out of it. We put magnet materials on the back of it so they can put it up on their refrigerators. Okay, so we have our scratch piece like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this outside. I'm going to spray seal it. And when you spray seal these pieces, it really gives them a really strong finished look. That's really fun. All right, and then we'll get this formatted up. I think I'm going to use, I've been wanting to try this out with mounted onto a piece of wood grain paper. So I'm going to experiment with that and see what it looks like. Okay, so spray sealing. And after I spray seal this, I'm going to need to let it sit for about 15 minutes or something like that. And let it dry pretty complete, you know, thoroughly. Okay, we are spray sealed here, and spray sealing with any type of clear acrylic sealant is fine. I happen to really like using the Triptych on mine. Getting a big slathering, shiny slathering of this sealant really, it really finishes off these tiles really nicely. You can see the shine on there. One of the things that always surprises me about this Triptych is that it, I don't know, it doesn't, I mean, if you get a super, super thick slathering, it's going to take longer to dry than, like, you know, workable fixative or something like that sprayed very lightly. But as thick as I put it on here, and you can see it's really, really glassy. It doesn't seem to take too much longer than the other ones. And then what I did was I put these down and I spray sealed at a little bit of an angle too, so it got the most of the edges here. I don't know. I think that's from before, but I don't know. They seem to be. I think it seems to be that gold, or is it still rubbing off some? I don't know. Maybe it is still rubbing off a little bit. I thought it was dry. Okay, so I'm going to mount it on this. Now, I don't like cutting this out first and then mounting the pieces, okay? I happen to think it's just easier to place these down and to trim this out afterwards. You know what I mean? Rather than just trying to center all these types of things on a pre-cut piece of paper. All right, now these are tiles now, so I don't have to be too careful about this. Let's see. In terms of my usage of my tape runner, the crafter's tape that I use is a permanent, so it's really, it is really aggressive. So I'm just going to go, I think just one little strip like that is adequate on these. Again, this is a really aggressive tape, so. Now, if I'm going with paper, it's going to be a little bit floppy, but these are, stiff, like tiles, so I don't need to do that. Okay, so kind of like this. What I meant by, I would go closer to the edge on, paper. And I'm going about, I don't know, it's probably like 1/8 of an inch in between. I'm just eyeballing. I would never measure something like this. Although you certainly could, but you know what I mean? I mean, you crafters, just kind of eyeball it. See, like that? All right, now what we're going to do is we'll trim this out. And I just eyeball this too, okay? So, I want it roughly about the same, width as the top and the left-hand side, of course. Sorry if my head is in the way here. Okay, go like this. Now I'm going to take a look. I might want to do a double mount on this, which I think I will. I think I'll be doing it with the gold. Now I might be a little bit off on one side or the other. I don't worry about that type of thing. All right, so what we have is this floppy little piece right here, and here goes my piece right here. Yeah, that to me looks okay, but I need a little extra bling around the edge. Now, I don't have too much space on here, unless I can always go this way, and that looks pretty cool, but I want that little quote on there, which I think is going to be cool. So let's do this right here. Now my tape runner on this one now, because I'm using this is floppy now, okay, I'll go a little bit closer to the edge like this. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be mounting the trio onto a piece of gold foil. Okay, now remember, I don't have too much space around, the perimeter right here. Like this. So, yeah, it has to be fairly small. Okay, so, pardon my head. I really need to get this on here pretty carefully. This tape is so aggressive. It grabbed on maybe a little bit narrower up top there than what I wanted, so I was really trying to force that down. So I got it about where I wanted it. Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit crooked right there, but there's nothing I can do about that. That tape is so aggressive. Which we want, right? Okay, this is a little bit thicker. Or a lot thicker than that wood paper. Wood grain paper. All right, like this. I did a pretty sloppy job with that formatting over there. It's kind of at a little bit of an angle, but hey, this is what this looks like right here. You know what I mean? I think it looks pretty good like that. All right, now let's see. My little quote stamp. I've got all this ink on my fingers, I think. Here, let me do it on this side. You get a little bit too much inky kind of, see, I got a little gold ink right there. I'll just put that on the back. My fingers are a little bit inky. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to try to, I don't know how successful I'll be, but I'm going to try to stamp this just directly on top of this piece of paper down here. I don't know how much it's going to show up. But usually I'm kind of lazy when it comes to stamping, believe it or not. So I'm going to try to stamp this right down here. And if I get a really good impression of it, I'm going to go with that, okay? And if I don't, what I can always do is I can stamp this on a separate piece of paper, mount it on here. That's going to look better too if I do that. But that's going to take more work. So I always go for, I don't know, when it comes to the quotes, I always go for the easier thing first. And then if it doesn't work, then I just, I spend a little bit more time on the quote area. Now I'm going to do this one in the gold ink because that also kind of reiterates this on here. That gold perimeter. I'm going to be using a Brilliance gold. Brilliance, the golds on black, sometimes they don't stand out too much or enough in terms of contrast. So, we'll just see how it looks. You can do this and you can stamp it on a separate piece of paper and test it out, do a test print. I'm just going to go for it here. And since I did just re-ink this pad, to get the edges of these tiles right here, I'm just going to go ahead and go for it here. Okay, that is inked up. You always want to make sure that you ink up your quote stamps very evenly. And I'm going to stamp and pray here. A lot of people, you use a stamp positioner, which is a good idea. But like I said, I'm a little bit lazy. Okay, now the reason why I haven't tacked this down yet is because I want to see where this is, and I'll put this in relation to the quote, okay? So let's go about right there, and from my vantage point here, that looks about straight. So we'll go like that. Boy, when I was lining it up, I was really close to the paper. I'm glad I didn't double stamp it. Of course, if I accidentally touched a little bit on this side, I would flip it back over and use that other side again. And just, I'd get rid of that smudge as best as possible. Okay, so this is a thick gold ink. I'm going to try not to use too much pressure on here, but just adequate pressure and hold. My Brilliance inks are just, well, everyone's Brilliance inks are water-based and fast drying. Now this is just a matte piece of black paper, so you can use an oil-based gold ink too. But again, they're thicker inks, so you don't want to squish them down too much, otherwise they're going to squish out from underneath the stamp and not give you a really, opaque impression. So you want to go as opaque as possible. But I'm holding this down so that that ink transfers too and starts to set up a little bit. Not dry, I would say, but, set up a little bit. So it would just have a better chance of transferring. But let's see how this goes here. Okay, you know what I mean? To me, the center of that isn't quite as bold, but to me it looks fine. Maybe if you emboss it on there, that would look even better because it would be a little bit more raised and, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of word form on this, though. You know what I mean? So if you embossed it, I don't know if you, I don't know, is there detailed golden? But look at that glitter on my hand. In every one of my projects these days, I'm getting glitter all over the place. Okay, but yeah, you know, you don't want those little areas in the middle of your letter forms to fill in. I don't know. Maybe embossing powder would be too thick. I don't know. You be the judge of that. You, if you've done a lot of embossing before, you know more about it than I do, which is, I know, like very, very little about embossing. I've only done it a few times. Okay, and we'll position this down. Let's see. A little bit too high. Oh, did I just go out of focus there? Here. Okay, so let's go. I think that looks about right. Right about there. I just kind of eyeball things, okay? And I don't know, you know, trust your eye. Kind of move it around a little bit too, and you'll usually kind of know where something kind of stands out a little bit more to you than others. But look how, now that looks really good together like that, in my opinion. We got that gold from the letter forms like that, and then the gold around in the perimeter. Maybe it was good that I only had like a small piece of it, so it's not overpowering, but I think this looks like a pretty elegant card like this. It has some heft to it because of these tiles, though. But I think this would look really good, too, just on a piece of paper. Glossy cardstock, it would have a little bit more sheen, but we do have that shininess to it with the triple glaze. So, okay, now, see, I've done that triple glaze on there, too. On top of that triple glaze, if you thought, I want to go a little bit more kind of like some kind of little brighter tone, I wouldn't go too extreme, you know, but here's this little violet tone like this, and I can go right over my glaze and add in a little bit of, you know, additional color into the scene. Okay, so this is a little bit of a brighter violet like that. And then you can take, you know, your pen and just kind of blend it out a little bit more too. Remember, you're kind of blending on top of that sealant, okay? See this right here? I don't know if you can see this, but I'm adding a little bit more shadow work into the darker areas of my scene. And I think that looks pretty good. And let's do a little bit, just out of curiosity, let me add a little bit more to my sky here. This is a little bit rough here. So I'm adding a little bit around the perimeter like this. And then I'm going in with a lighter, a really pale violet, okay? And I'm going to blend that out a little bit. Now, I don't need to reseal this. You know, alcohol inks, when they're laid down on something, if you've used alcohol inks before, they're you know, they lay down and they, you know, they're pretty firmly affixed to, you know, whatever you use them on. But I'm just, this is like really subtle right here, okay? You can go for that little alcohol ink kind of texturing that you get too sometime. But I think that looks pretty cool in there. Blending down, getting a little bit more in that water area. That. I don't know if you can tell. I mean, it's really, really subtle. Let me try something right here. Here's a little bit of blue. Now, blue isn't going to turn violet blue, but maybe we can get a little tinge of like an extra little hue in here. Remember, it's over the top of that warm tone as well. But let's get some of this into these rocks. This. All right, now this is supposed to be a really quick scene right here. So I'm doing some little fine-tuning little adjustments on here that, like I said, you don't need to do. But I don't know. This is like so much fun to kind of play around with because it's that type of surface like that that really allows you to do that. But again, I think this kind of this graphic format like this looks really cool with the divided segments like that, which again, you don't have to do. I think, and by the way, so I like that, I like the look of that wood paper too, wood grain paper. I think that wood grain paper added a nice little touch. What do you think? All right, so I don't know if you can tell those little tinges of blue in there. That's kind of fun. This is a pretty, dark mid-tone, bright blue in there like that. But look at this right here. So it's like that. And you can write whatever you want here, like that. So a lake is the landscape's most beautiful and expressive feature. It is Earth's eye, looking into which the beholder measures the depth of his own nature. Henry David Thoreau. Like that. So we have this card like this. And look at those tiles as they kind of glisten like that. And then you can put whatever you want in here. We have this gold in here. You can do some like little swatchy little things of gold. You can even put it on your finger and do it in here. And then, you can write in. I would get a gold pen and I would write in gold to whoever, happy birthday, whoever, love, whoever, you know what I mean? With the date, with the metallic gold pen would be really fantastic like that, I think. So, all right. So this wasn't like super quick card like this, but, or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's not a quick card at all. Yeah, I'm looking at the 46-minute mark like that. But I think it's a pretty cool project like that. Now, you can also mass produce these, if you're doing some of these, I would do a little, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 of them at a time and just kind of mass produce the production part of it, and get these things laid out. These tiles come in packs of, I don't even know how many come in a pack, but there's quite a few of them. But it would be cool to kind of mass produce. You can do like different colored backgrounds in there or something like that. You can do those little 8-pointed North Star types of things all at the same time. One of the things that I didn't even do is I didn't put in like a little bit of a fog or mist in the background. You can apply that with a cotton ball with a little bit of white pigment ink. I would do that before I spray seal it though. Typically you don't want to do that on top unless you're going to spray seal it again, but that would have been cool on there too. But see those little, highlights on those rocks. Look how dimensional those rocks look with a little bit of highlighting on it. Again, this is on the board, so I did it scratched, but if you don't do that, 99% of the cards that I'm doing are not on Claybord, so I'm putting those highlights in with things like my paint pens these days, and I think that looks really good too. You can do both ways too. We can have scratch little stars in there, and you can have like a raised little star. So see this one, this little paint pen's a little bit more white, so you can have like a like a brighter star and more subdued ones in the background that you scratch into. See those ones in there like that? And then maybe there's a couple little stars reflecting down in this water. Like that. So we could add it in with the pen, or you can do it with your scratched out type of thing. Look down there too. So, if you're getting anything from this, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can work your multimedia, see what things you have in your supplies. I think a little raised crystal on one of these tiles would be really cool, or a couple of them. You can use glitter. I didn't have like the right color stickles or something like that, but if you want to add a little shimmer to something, you can go with the, one of these stickle types of things. I don't know, play around, get creative with it. And, I don't know, you can come up with some different types of looks. Sometimes if you're going for a sequential piece, you have something like this on here, and you have your gold writing in here to whoever you're sending the card to, if you're sending it to someone. And if you want to do something on the back, you can do a little, I don't know, let's see, something like this. We have that little star up there. Maybe put a little star down here in gold or something like that. And you could say like handmade by, and then you or something, you know, your name's going to be in here if you're doing something too. But, you know, something like that would be kind of cool. Or you could stamp out that same little person down here in gold. And that would be kind of a nice, you know, beginning, middle, and end type of sequencing on that. So, all right. Anyways, I'm blabbing on. I'm a total geek when it comes to card making and stamping, so I apologize for kind of blabbing on, you know, on these videos. I just can't, you know, and when I get done with something like this, I'm just thinking about, I'm usually thinking about something like, oh, we can also do this and this and this and this and this, because it, you know, it doesn't occur to me until I'm looking at it, or I'm reminded of it, you know, when I'm seeing things like this. So, I don't know, different things come to mind for future types of projects. All right, thanks again for watching.